Hey everyone, so for episode 3 of the recipe challenge, we're doing viral recipes that I've seen online, kind of on Pinterest, Instagram, the works. So we're looking at a chopped Italian sub, which I know that's kind of an older viral recipe, but I wanted to try it. Then a sliced cucumber salad. What else are we looking at? Trying to think. A cookie recipe, and there was something else. What was that? Subs, the salad, the cookies, and I only ate it the other day. Well, I'll put it here, or you'll see. But anyway, they're pretty good recipes, so I hope you enjoy this video, and like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye. So the first thing we made this week was these Italian chopped subs. So I'd seen this idea ages ago, and I'm sure lots of you have seen it before, where in the videos they kind of put everything on one board, they just like all chuck it on in a pile, and then they chop it up and add it into the roll. But obviously I don't have enough space on this small chopping board to chuck everything on and cut it in one go. I think you could do it in the food processor too. I think that would be a good option. But instead I just hand chop it, and then we're going to chuck it into a bowl. So I have a glass bowl, and we can chuck all the ingredients in that, then mix it up and then chuck it in a sub. So the first one we have is some kind of iceberg lettuce. I just use about a quarter of the lettuce. Then we have a tomato, some bell pepper, a red onion. I have cornichons, but you could use, or however you say it, you could use normal gherkins or pickles. And then you want to use some sort of kind of Italian meats. And in the recipe as well, they use provolone cheese, but I can't have cheese, so I just minus the cheese from that. But really, I think you could, mix and match the kind of filling that you have. So instead of using Italian meat, I think I've got a Spanish meat selection here, just because that's what I fancied. And then I've also got a pack of ham as well that I add to the mix. And then you make like a sauce as well. So here I'm just dicing up these bell peppers pretty small. You want everything quite small in this so that it kind of mixes in with the sauce and creates like a kind of cohesive filling. And it really did taste delicious, so I definitely recommend it. But I will link a recipe below. The board did get a bit wet, so if you use like a towel to get off the excess water. Then I have a big tomato here. So the tomato was also quite wet, so I ended up having to wipe up the water after that as well. And then I guess you don't want it too wet inside the filling either. And then you could, I imagine, just get any sub rolls and fill them. I did make some homemade sub rolls on this day because I'm gluten free, and I fancied making some homemade gluten free rolls as well. So that obviously made the recipe a little bit longer, but if you were just doing this and then chucking it into any rolls that you just had, then this really would take no time. It'd be super easy dinner recipe. And I did keep the leftovers, and I had it for lunch the next day, and I think dinner the next day as well. So I had it a couple of times afterwards because this makes quite a lot of filling, and I only made 2 big rolls worth, so there was lots of filling left over. So yeah, I've got a red onion, and I'm just going to cut that up nice and small as well. I guess if you do it, cut it all in one go, obviously everything's going to be the same size. And I would prefer the onion to be quite a bit smaller than the meat, for example. I prefer to be chunky. So I guess that's the benefit of doing it separately. But again, if you did it in the food processor, you could put in like the onion first and whatever you wanted to be the smallest first, and then slowly add in everything else and combine. I think it would actually be a really good option to blend it all up. I think it would just be quite quick. I'm not sure if people do that. I haven't seen anyone do that, but I'm sure people have done that. But yeah, obviously the benefit of doing it separately is that you can choose how big everything is, and it is a bit easier having it in just one bowl kind of situation. I wonder if other people have done this same kind of idea, the chopped salad, but with different fillings, because I think you could do some other fillings really nicely with the kind of same concept of having it all chopped nice and small. But I don't know. Anyway, once it was all put together, it really did remind me of a Subway, kind of the smell and the taste of it. Really reminded me of a Subway sandwich. So I'm just dicing these cornichons up really small. Obviously they're nice and small anyway, so they're super simple to dice up. And I do munch on them as I go, because how can you not? They're delicious. I know some people would probably prefer these subtracted, but to me they're just fabulous. So I must have done, I don't know, 4, 5 for these. Add them to the bowl. And I have a paper towel underneath to stop my board from sliding. Then, yeah, I'm using the Spanish meat selection, which is salchichon, chorizo, and oh, I don't remember. What is it called? It's like prosciutto. It might just be prosciutto. Anyway, and I just kind of pile them all up and cut it up. I do leave this quite chunky because I quite like the chunky bits of meat, but I do separate it a little bit as I add it into the bowl because it gets quite stuck together. Salchichon is my boyfriend's favorite kind of cold meat, so that's why I had the Spanish meat selection rather than the Italian. But I like both personally. My favorite cold meat actually is prosciutto cotto or whatever it is. Is it prosciutto cotto? I don't know. Something like that. It's absolutely the dish delicious, and I love having that in a wrap with salsa. So there goes in the salchichon. And again, I'm kind of pulling it apart as I add it in because the layers kind of stick together. And then I do have some ham as well that we'll chop up. And this I think is honey mustard ham. So it has a bit more flavour than just your average ham, but either way. So just chopping up all the meats and adding them into the bowl. And then the last step is to make the sauce for the filling and then just add it into the sandwiches. I think it would be good as well if you toasted your bread before you added the filling because it's quite wet from all the sauce. So it'd be nice if you toasted it as well. Especially if you had super soft bread, it would be quite soft. It could get a bit maybe too wet otherwise. I didn't have that with my bread to be fair, but I'm just thinking that that could be a problem. So yeah, honey and mustard ham. Slice that up and add that in. And then we've got all our main ingredients. So here it's combined, and then we're going to add our sauce. So we have mayo, and I'm basically out of mayo, so it's quite hard for me to empty. Quite hard for me to get any mayo out. But we don't want to waste any, right? Then to that we're going to add some Italian style seasoning. This has like oregano, basil and stuff in it, which is really adds to the flavour. Then we'll mix that through with a spoon. And then I realised quickly I definitely don't have enough mayo, so I just keep adding some mayo. And I also did add some apple cider vinegar, which I think I forgot to show. And that's it all mixed through. So it's absolutely delicious. So then we'll just put it into our rolls. So here I've got the rolls that I made. So I cut this one on half. This is not a bread knife, so forgive my terrible cussing. But anyway, once we get it in half, we can fill it all up. And they were still kind of soft and warm because they were just freshly baked. So I guess you could choose how much filling you want in it. I went with quite a bit of filling. As much as you can fit, really. And then I just had a half of a roll. They were about 12-inch rolls, so they were pretty big. And then you can see it all loaded up. But I also did one for my boyfriend, and he had a whole kind of roll, so I'll show that as well. And some of the fillings did spill out. I mean, if you did more sauce, it probably would stick together even more. But yeah, here's the one that I did for him. So I cut the bread in half, filled it up with filling. You can see it looks pretty good. And then he had that for his dinner. So I would definitely recommend and eat it again. So here we're making the arrayas. I'm not 100% sure how you say it, so feel free to correct me. But we have some minced parsley, onion, and these spices. Hot paprika, and again I'll link it below in case you want to make it. And we're going to add that in a bowl with some mince and mix that all through till it looks like that. And then it's super simple. You just cut a pitta in half and fill it. So I use the Warburton's gluten free pittas and they worked really well for this. And I didn't have any problems. So you just fill it thinly and then cook 3 minutes on each side and then sear off the ends as well. I may have overcooked mine, but that didn't matter, they were still delicious. And then you want to make a yogurt kind of tahini and yogurt sauce with some vinegar. And you can just dip it in that. And I saw these on Instagram one evening and I thought they looked delicious, so I thought I'd give them a shot. You can see in the middle that they are cooked through. I broke that one open. So I'd recommend those as well. Then I made these cookies that I also saw on Instagram. So far, the chopped Italian sub and the Arroyos, I'm not sure how you say it, both worked out. These cookies didn't exactly work out, but I do think it's my fault. So you'll see what I do wrong. But they still turned out delicious. They just didn't turn out like a bakery style cookie. So we started off by creaming the batter. And obviously I am making these gluten free and dairy free. So that might be part of why they didn't turn out completely right. But I also do make one other decision that I just ran out of time. So I think that was also why it didn't turn out completely right. So once you've creamed the butter, you add in the sugar and then cream them together. And you spend quite a lot of time creaming the butter in this recipe. I'm presuming to kind of get the air in it, and that changes the texture of the cookie. And these cookies, like I said, they did still turn out completely delicious. Just not the texture, maybe, I would expect, or kind of the thickness. But other than that, they were completely delicious, and I would make them again. So then we cream the butter and the sugar together with the paddle hook on the KitchenAid is what I'm using. But I'm sure you could do it any other way. Then you want to add in some vanilla and eggs. And again, I showed the recipe earlier, so you could pause on that if you want to repeat it. I think we've got 2 eggs here and then some vanilla. I use the vanilla bean paste, and I really enjoy that because it gives kind of like a stronger flavour than the vanilla extract or essence. But whatever you have on hand would work. Vanilla bean obviously would be the strongest. So we just mix those together as well, and then we want to measure out our dry ingredients. So we've got flour. I think I do add some xanthan gum just to make it more of a normal texture compared to a gluten-free cookie. Some baking soda. We use baking soda and baking powder in this recipe. And this does make big cookies. I made 6 cookies, but they were big cookies. Then some baking powder. And like I said, I do add some xanthan gum. An interesting ingredient in this one was it called for, I think it was a tablespoon or a teaspoon worth of cornstarch, which I don't think I've seen before in any cookie recipe. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind that, but I do find it interesting. And you do all your dry ingredients separately to the wet ingredients. Also, some instant coffee. I think I've used coffee powder once in a cookie recipe, and it was delicious, so I was glad to see that in this one. And then I used some sea salt flakes. I used an espresso powder, so I use less because it is stronger than normal coffee powder. But I really enjoy the taste of that one, and it's the one that I use when I make tiramisu too. So we just want to mix all those ingredients together, and then we can get them in on the KitchenAid. Oh, and there's something gum, that's when I remember to add that. So once they're all mixed in, we can get them mixing in with the wet ingredients that are still mixing at this point in the KitchenAid. So mix them in with a spoon to make sure they're all incorporated. You probably shouldn't mix on your scales, but do what I say, not as I do, as they always joke. And then we just want to slowly add them to the other mixture. So do it kind of spoon by spoon. Well, I start with 2 tablespoons, then mix it, and then kind of add it spoon by spoon. And I start the paddle attachment on. It created quite a wet dough. It wasn't a super dry cookie dough. So at that point I was a bit concerned about the texture of the cookies. And you could check back what I did because there's a possibility I maybe just measured something wrong. Then I do some dark chocolate chips and some white chocolate chips. You meant to do dark chocolate and milk chocolate, but I didn't have any milk chocolate, so I just did dark chocolate and white chocolate. So what I will say is they definitely used more chocolate than I used in their recipe, and that did look a lot yummier. So I would follow the amount that they recommend, but I just didn't have enough on hand. So I just use this dairy-free white chocolate as well. And just make sure you check the ingredients and everything you're using if you're using gluten-free ingredients. So for this I use the gluten-free Dove's Farm flour. I think I use their plain flour. And so yeah, just if you're gluten-free and dairy-free or have any allergies, just make sure you're checking the ingredients on what you're using. And then you just want to scoop very large cookies, and you want 6 of them, and then you want to place them into the freezer. Now this is where I think I went wrong. You meant to place them in the freezer for 2 hours. I didn't have 2 hours, so I placed them in the freezer for about 40 minutes and then took them out, and this is how soft they were looking. So they were thicker, like sturdier, but not frozen though. But I went on to cook them anyway because that's all the time I had. And so I did 3 on each baking sheet. And you do want them super spread apart, because if what happened to me happens to you and they spread out in the oven, they take up a lot of space. So this is them in the oven, partway done. And this is them once they've come out. So more of a typical cookie than a bakery style cookie, but they still came out super delicious. And that's a small side plate, and you can see the cookie is huge. And it's pretty soft inside. And quite chocolatey. But overall I would bake this cookie recipe again. I would just freeze it for the 2 hours that they recommend. And lastly, we're making the cucumber sliced salad, which was everywhere, and we're doing the Asian style cucumber sliced salad. I keep almost saying carrot. Cucumber sliced salad. So just slicing the cucumber really small and placing it in a bowl. They do it in a container and then you can shake it. So if you have a container that you can put it in and shake it, then you can do that, but I'm just doing it in a bowl. Then you want a clove of garlic, and to dice that up, you can use a mincer or a micro plane to cut it down, but I just mince it with my knife. And I wasn't so sure about this recipe, but you see how I feel at the end. Then once you've got your garlic in, you want a spring onion, so I give that a quick wash. And then slice that up pretty fine. And get that all in the bowl as well. And then I think that's all you need cutting up. So after that, it's just some sauces. So I use gluten-free soy sauce, but you could use normal soy sauce if you're not gluten-free. And I don't measure it out. The video I watched, they didn't measure it, so I was just winging it like they did. Then some sesame seed oil. You don't want to add too much sesame seed oil if there's anything you don't want to add too much of, because that can make it taste kind of funny. This was brand new, so I had to get the cap off. I'd say that was about a tablespoon worth. And then I didn't have any chili oil, so I just did some olive oil and some chili powder. You could also use some chili flakes. I use cayenne pepper powder. And then you also want a teeny bit of sugar as well. I only have a huge bag, so I had to be quite careful whilst I poured it, not to accidentally drop a whole bag of sugar in it. It also calls for some MSG, but I didn't have any of that. And lastly, some sesame seeds. So I'll grab a spoon and get that mixed through. It wasn't too hard to mix in a bowl. Probably easier, to be fair, than doing it in a container. And then I do add some extra sesame seeds on top to top with them with.
That's really good, actually.
I didn't think I'd like it. I love cucumber. I wasn't sure about the mix. And then I did top it on some of these rice noodles for dinner. The recipes, I ended up writing them down, were the cucumber salad, the Asian style cucumber sliced salad, and the Italian style sub rolls, and also the arrayas. I'm still not sure how to say it, so if you know, let me know. So those were the recipes I ended up writing into the recipe book. I didn't write the recipe for the cookies down. I think I need to try that again and then maybe decide whether I want to write that down. But overall, that's a really good turnout. 3 out of 4 recipes written down into the recipe book, and I really did enjoy them. So I hope you give some of those recipes a go, or let me know some recipes that you think would be good for me to try out and maybe get into the recipe book. And I really appreciate it if you've made it to the end of this video. So thank you for watching and have a nice day. Bye!